Hey everyone, thanks for joining me in this session at the Product-Led Growth Summit. I'm excited to be presenting and I have an interesting topic for you. It's called the five-stage framework to accelerate product adoption. A little bit more about me. I'm Gokul Suresh from WhatFix. I lead and manage the marketing team at WhatFix. And this here is a pre-recorded session, so you can come back to it whenever you like. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me at gokul@whatfix.com or tweet out to me at I am Gokul. A bit about the company that I work for. WhatFix is a digital adoption platform that caters to SMBs and enterprises across the world with our in-app interactive guidance and content authoring capabilities. With WhatFix, you can transform your user software interaction by efficiently driving end user adoption and digital proficiency. And we've been helping companies of all sizes, and some of our marquee customers you can see on the screen are, Microsoft, Experian, Cardinal Health, Cisco, and many others. So we help these companies streamline their product adoption by empowering them to provide real-time in-app user onboarding, training, and also proactive support at the time of need. Okay, so I've been with WhatFix right from the start as the first marketer, and that's how I am knee deep into the world of product-led growth and adoption. And I've created plenty of content about product adoption, which you can check out at the WhatFix Academy. That is academy.whatfix.com, or even my LinkedIn page. So also feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and if you have any questions, please do ask. Okay, so that's the bit about me and WhatFix. So let's dive right into the presentation. Spoiler alert about the presentation. This is going to be really easy to consume. And I've prepared the flow in such a way that you get the maximum out of the next 20 minutes. So the first thing that I've in store for you is all about the benefits that you'll be getting on implementing the product adoption ideas that I'm sharing with you today. So let's start with why you should have a deeper interest in product adoption. Well, companies with high user adoption rates generally enjoy lower CPA. That means more conversion on your leads. This is especially applicable for your freemium to premium conversion, or maybe basic to a higher package. Then secondly, higher retention. So once adoption is good, then more customers will stick with your product, right? And that actually adds up to the third point, which is higher marketing ROI. Obviously, the first and second point leads to this. Then higher customer lifetime value. So that means higher RRR is possible. That means higher possible ARR and more opportunities to renew the subscription, upsell, or cross-sell. Then lastly, lower customer marketing and retention costs. So this is one point that justifies everything. Well, if all of this doesn't rock your boat, then I don't know what will. And now we know about the benefits, and I'm sure there are plenty more that can be added to the list. But before you understand how to achieve all of this by improving your end user adoption or product adoption, you should first understand the why behind it. So I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's Start with Why, and I believe that the why behind is why behind what you do is the most important factor, and even when it comes to adoption, this is critical. So this here is a quote that I love. People don't buy what you do; they buy why you do it, and what you do simply proves what you believe. Well, do you agree to that? When I tried correlating this quote with adoption, so there was this interesting thought I had. It's about the gap between the expected value and the realized value of a product. Basically, what you think your product's value prop is, and why should anyone care about it? So to understand this, I want you to get deeper understanding of the entire technology adoption scenario, and to go in deeper with what product adoption or technology adoption really is. To understand this, I want you to get deeper understanding of the entire product adoption scenario, and to go deeper into what product adoption really is and why you should care. And then we can find and fix it with the framework. Well, as you already know, it's a growing buzzword, and there are far too many interpretations of what it really is. But what is the definition? So, by definition, product adoption is simply the state in which a digital product or tool is used as intended to its maximum extent possible. In most cases, this is how product adoption looks for digital products. It starts off with a high where there's a great user engagement and productivity, and then it gradually decreases over time due to irregular support or sporadic user engagement. So the traditional case such as this happens with most product companies, especially because they focus on the initial onboarding activities and then ignore continuous learning needs of users. But to thwart this dip, what you must first understand is how this process works. And for this, you'll have to wear your prospect's shoes and pick up their magnifying glass. So in a user's perspective, the way of buying or switching to a new product is actually a multi-stage psychological process which all prospective customers go through, from learning of a new product to becoming a loyal customer or even rejecting it. So typically, this is how a users nowadays perceive or goes through buying a product. So these are the stages. The first thing in the stage would be awareness, wherein the prospects actually come to know about the product but lack sufficient information about it. Then they go into the stage which is interest. They try to get more information and understand the fitment for the use cases and whether it solves their pain points or not. Then thirdly, evaluation. They consider whether the product is beneficial within their budget and whether it will give them the expected ROI. After evaluating comes trial or demo. So this is where they get the first hand taste of the product. So this could be through a freemium model or a completely personalized demonstration. This ultimately helps in determining whether the product is worth their time and money. And finally, adoption or rejection. So ultimately, the prospect decide to adopt the product or look for something else. Now, just think back. I just told you two scenarios: product adoption from a product owner's perspective, and now from a user's perspective. So just to clear things up, I wanted to take up terminologies that are prevalent in today's SaaS world, and there are multiple ways to describe product adoption, right? So these are three common terminologies that you'll come across with the content that is created and it's available online. So you will see product adoption, user adoption, and digital adoption. But what is what? And it's confusing. And much like how we are so confused on the names of who is who in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, I mean, I'm a big fan, and this is something which I just love. This is an absolute awesome meme, right? And so, what about the product adoption, user adoption, and digital adoption? What do you think? Well, truth be told, they're more or less the same, but each of them has a slight change in perspective. So let me explain that. So product adoption is seen from the perspective of a product owner or manager, whose aim is to make the usage of the product by its prospects or users to its maximum extent possible. And this could be a common term that is mostly used by, let's say, owners or marketers who talk about the SaaS product. Now, when it comes to user adoption, it is moreover the user's perspective in which they mentally accept the usage of a new product in their lives. In the previous slides, I did show you how a user's psychological thought process to buying a product is. And user adoption is just an extension of the last stage, that is once they decide to go for the product. Then finally, digital adoption. This is simply the corporate jargon which is used widely by managers at larger companies whose primary aim is to help their employees adopt their in-house technologies. So in most cases, larger enterprises will have multiple products for their employees, like a CRM. So in most cases, larger enterprises will have multiple products for their employees, like a CRM, ERP, HCM, and many others. Digital adoption is mostly focused on enabling these companies for making their employees more effective and efficient. An interesting fact here is that quite recently Gartner has recognized the whole platforms called digital adoption platforms. You should definitely check that out. Okay, so the reason I wanted to be clear about all these topics is because at WhatPicks we have been seeing a lot of cases from various different backgrounds. Commonly, there are two recurring types here. So SaaS product looking for adoption strategies for their massive user base, or big enterprise looking for adoption strategies to increase productivity of their employees on the application which they use in-house. So if you club both of these ideas together, which are recurring, there's something that comes really good out of it, and that's what we did. And we came up with this idea, and this is what we preach to all of our customers. So product adoption in our eyes is a huge umbrella in which we accommodate various different processes seen individually in many cases. We allow our customers to tackle them collectively with our digital adoption platform, and this will set this explanation will actually set complete context for you when we discuss the 5-stage framework in the next half. So what all fits under the umbrella? So to start with, user onboarding. Love at first sight is a myth, but if done right, you can make sure that your product inspires love at first impression. User onboarding is that period wherein your user, the prospective customer, has the first impression of the product and is guided all the way to using the product. And this could be a lot tricky. I mean, it's not just your product UX or UI that impresses, but also how you actually drive your users to their first touch gratification, or rather commonly known as the aha moment. Typically, the chances are 10 to 30% of your new users who signed up for your product for a trial or demo never even set their foot on the product. So why would that be? I mean, there are many ways to engage and activate the user at this point. Say, for example, you could offer intelligent defaults like product tour that gives them the taste of the value, the aha moment, or instant gratification. So here's an example of product tour created on Microsoft Office 365. Right, so or you could also go with the traditional way of explaining the why with interactive videos, step-by-step tutorials over newsletters, even blogs, or even a gamified model. I mean, this is the one with Duolingo, and I'm sure that this is something which you will find in any adoption related presentation. Duolingo is just pretty awesome there. So ultimately, a user who achieves their first success with your application quickly is most likely to stay. And if a user is unable to get this initial success with the application, possibilities, they will churn. So that brings us to the next point in the product adoption umbrella, that is continuous product training. So considering that your users are already on board by now, the next step is to train the user who is in fact a customer, right? So now we need to enable and empower them and make them a power user from a regular user. And there are a lot of ways you can do it. Traditionally, it's more virtual and classroom-based training, documentations, videos, etc. They do work really well, but in many cases, there is a fact of knowledge retention that you should be considering. Few methods that work really well here is training with bite-sized modules, popularly known as micro-learning. And the way we deal with it is by providing new users training within the application with real-time interactive walkthroughs. Here's an example. So this not only helps users understand the process, but also learn by doing. So interestingly, according to LinkedIn's Workplace Learning Report in 2019, 49% end users prefer to learn at the point of need rather than being trained before the moment of application. I mean, that's a number which is alarmingly rising, and in a couple of years, that's going to be the main thing in the steed. Now, the third bit in the umbrella, that's the release training. So this is something that many products overlook. So training is never a one size fits all, and it's all about consistency. It is said that here's an interesting fact. I mean, this is actually pretty interesting. So after 1 hour, people retain less than half of the information presented. And after 1 day, people forget more than 70% of what was taught in training. And after 6 days, 75% forgotten. So, I mean, just explaining that makes me wonder how much of all of this, this presentation, would you remember in a few days? I'm sure, if you want a refresher, you can come back to the video if needed. But I mean, ultimately, that's the paradox, right? So, consistent training and feature adoption is the key over there. I mean, that is how you can actually get product adoption while during the release training also consistent and effective. So the user who is now your customer, should be getting the consistent training to make sure that the potential of the product is also realized and utilized. So yeah, that's the bit about the knowledge retention. And mind you, I mean, when the user who is now your customer should get consistent training to make sure the potential of the product is completely realized and utilized. That brings us to the last point in our product adoption umbrella, that is a customer success and support, proactive support. So it's best to club both of this as they work in tandem with each other. Well, if support is really required to drive your users action, then you can be sure that there's a gap in your adoption strategy, but it's still not late to plug it. And that's where the whole customer success steps in. With proactive customer success in place, you can make sure your adoption strategy has less kinks in their armor. So that's the product adoption umbrella. With that context set, I'll now dive into the framework as promised. So this framework is what we preach to our customers to get their adoption in place. And in our process, we begin by understanding their existing processes and then developing a plan accordingly so that they can pull it off systematically. So I'll move on to the first bit of the framework, which is actually design. So designing your adoption strategy, that is where you start. And what would that include? I mean, the first point, mapping your objectives and goals to your users' onboarding and training requirements. And then designing the processes to be simpler with adoption in mind. So in many cases, adoption strategies are taken up as an afterthought. So if you make sure it's in place at the planning stage itself, then it would be smoother sailing for you. And if you're already having a product in place, then plan out for the next release. Then thirdly, I mean, sync your values to fit the KPIs of the user. So this again is a critical part here. Empathize with your users and how your product actually helps them. Once you know that, you will get the synergy for your own product as well. Then decide the timing, delivery, and modalities of training. Then plan out engagement strategies across the entire journey or user life cycle. Obviously, I don't want to stress more on this. This is something which is very much pivotal. Consider the entire user journey when you're planning out, when you're designing your whole adoption strategy, rather than just the onboarding. That is something which many people overlook. Then finally, align the training objectives with the business objectives. So this obviously is the overarching goal for any product adoption initiative. So with these things in place, you will get a lot of clarity in the gaps that you may have, and how your users perceive your product and its usability. And this will definitely be a part of the user research. And so make sure that there is a good synergy between the UX designers and the product owners. And that brings us to the second bit, which is where you gear up and start executing the plan of action. Developing the training scope and content. So here are the points here. So develop a clear, easy to understand, easy to retain training content, which is also made available on demand for the user. So keep in mind that the pace and ability to learn would vary from user to user. There would be some digital natives who are really quick, and there would be laggards. There would be people who are not that tech savvy, who are slow. So keep in mind about the pace. Then Personalize the training content to fit the user's expectations by understanding the psyche and moreover thinking from their shoes. So in the design stage, you would also have gotten deeper into the persona. So this is the time to customize your product experience accordingly based on the persona and based on what your target audience would want. Now, another important thing here is to create the content specific to the training mechanism that you're going to use. Say, for example, if your product is low touch with less human touch, human involvement, then invest in a self-serving training and support mechanism, which helps the user learn at their own leisure. So this could be via interactive walkthroughs, a chat bot, community or forums rather, then learning management systems, or even gamified training. But what if your product needs a lot of handholding and it's very sophisticated and complex? Then it's high touch, right? So then go for something which is scalable. So your users would need something which is more blended. That approach has to be self-serving. It should have some self-serving mechanisms for the regular FAQs, but also a human effort where supporting the larger problems, where there is a lot of complications involved, a human will actually help. So many enterprise applications goes for this methodology of adoption, wherein the FAQs are resolved easily and the customer success focuses on the critical problems that the user faces. And the final point, segment and customize the onboarding and training strategies according to the user's proficiency. As I mentioned earlier, training and adoption is not one size fits all, and that's people who think that it's a mistake. So there would be users who are digital natives, as I said earlier, and who need actually less training and support. But you also have to consider those who are less tech savvy. They'll need a lot more hand holding. So once you have the training scope and the content developed, the next bit is about delivery. So delivery is another critical aspect when it comes to ensuring adoption. Of course, this is the tipping point as well. So if it works, your users won't churn and will be more loyal. Come on, they are getting the adoption that they want. If not, it's time to go back on the sketchboard and reiterate stage 1 and 2. Now, first and foremost, the format of training delivery is the most important thing for training success and higher adoption. Is it easily learnable for your users? I mean, will it captivate them? It's up to you to figure out what works best for them in those cases. Then delivery method should be in line with general user behavior. So is the method in sync with user expectations and demand? Does it engage a user in the way they are expecting? And of course, this all depends on the category of your product and your end users. And in fact, in the recent times, there are many companies seeing more success with on-demand in-app digital training methods, e-learning over traditional webinar, gamified and more interactive method of learning and training rather than classroom training and the traditional documentations. And finally, the training should also be continuous, and you must also account for post-training support. I'm sure I've repeated this point over and over again, and I still stand by it. I mean, this is the most pivotal part of adoption, and that is consistency. So for this aspect, you should be splitting the delivery in multiple phases. So we had discussed this briefly under the product adoption umbrella. So the different phases of delivery could be customer acquisition phase, which involves the initial onboarding and getting the user activated by not just one, but multiple aha moments. Then the power user phase, wherein you're activating a regular user to move to a power user. And often this can be done by incentivizing the shift. And if you make this happen, then you know for sure that those users are there to stay. Then the refresher or release training phase, wherein you remind them or give them a refresher training on the unused parts of the product, or even the newly added features to the existing users. Then the final thing is customer success phase, wherein your agenda is to make sure that the user utilizes the complete potential of the product and is finding the ROI. So this is where you gather the feedback and also plan out a potential renewal or upsell. Now, did you understand why I had to tell about the whole product adoption umbrella? Right. So moving on to the next bit, that is the stage 4, analyzing. So this is all about measuring and analyzing the effectiveness of adoption, and it's very much important, obviously, as you guys already know that, right? So for this, you should be developing key training and adoption metrics to track effectiveness. So just go beyond the adoption metrics like login frequency, time spent in product. I mean, these things are very easy to simulate, but instead you can go with metrics like processes executed, engagement rate, feature adoption rate, right? So all these things actually gives you a better idea rather than the vanity metrics, which is already there. Then focus on the perceived value. So perform qualitative research to better understand what makes new users adopt existing features, and even the existing users adopt new features. That actually will give you a lot more perspective. Then the last stage in the framework would be iterating the gaps in the strategy, right? This is definitely, again, very important. It's highly unlikely that you will hit home run at the first shot itself, but with consistency and a lot of streamlined efforts, you can definitely get to the winning total, and you can hit that product adoption ball right out of the park. But iteration and refining your existing strategy from time to time becomes really important for this reason. So apply improvements to your strategy in a gradual or progressive manner. So don't strive for the perfection right from the start. Remember that increasing adoption is a human process. It requires a lot of behavioral understanding and fine-tuning. Then secondly, space out the introduction of new iterated practices. So that is while refining, take a slice of the existing set of practices. Improve on the ones that aren't working based on your analytics data. Then in each improvement cycle, right, you should have that. I mean, that actually helps. Introduce techniques to address the specific needs of the user rather than adopting a set of techniques wholesale. I mean, in many cases, you may go full blown on adoption practices without knowing its impact, but be specific to the requirement at hand for a great impact. Then finally, leverage your champion. Your champion users humanize the whole new changes, and you can do it through, let's say, testimonials, videos, interviews, or even your community. So incentivize your champions and make them your soothsayers. So this will actually speed up your adoption way more quickly. Well, that's the 5-stage framework for accelerating product adoption, right? To be frank, the framework is actually just a baseline for all your product adoption activities, and it needs to be tinkered properly to work for your organization. But ultimately, this is how you start, and that's how you progress, and you have to keep at it. And believe me, if you stick with it, then for sure you're going to crack product adoption properly. I mean, you can see those graphs, the way it has to actually improve. That's where you're going to get. And in fact, that is something that we've validated and learned from the multiple iterations we have had with our customers at WhatFix. And well, thanks a lot for watching this session. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to write to me at gokul@whatfix.com, or tweet out to me at I'm Gokul on Twitter. And if you're interested in learning more about WhatFix's digital adoption platform, and you want a personalized demo of WhatFix, you can go to whatfix.com or join us in an expert session on product adoption. So we're going to have it later this month, and you can register on the link on the screen, that is bit.ly/whatfix-demo. So that's it. So thanks a lot, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the session. Let me know the feedback, and have a good one. Bye-bye.